The MLB offseason is off to the races, and the Philadelphia Phillies have done just about nothing. With Dave Dombrowski seeming to be asleep behind the wheel, or perhaps worse, negotiating in bad faith with some of the other teams, I do have some issues to break down here. And with all due respect to Jordan Romano, I do believe there are some bigger picture factors within this Phillies team that I believed would have been addressed at this point in the offseason. I want to break down the issue that I have specifically with Dombrowski and the way that he's going about his negotiation tactics, kind of my read on the situation with the marketplace in free agency and with this Phillies team specifically, and why I think this isn't leading to a good direction heading into next season. And I want to start out right with kind of my feel of things. Is that my honest belief coming into this offseason is Dave Dombrowski did view this as the opportunity. It is time to make a change. It is time to shake up this core, to elevate this Phillies roster into the true World Series championship contenders in a way that they have kind of flirted with in past years, but obviously have not got over that hump just yet. And I do think it is fair to assess that maybe they have tapped out a little bit. They capped out that core for what they are at this point. And what I think the honest reality is Dave Dombrowski has got to the offseason, looked at his options, and there frankly is not nearly as much flexibility as he expected to be the case. Now, I get it is not the end of the world. It's still very early in this offseason, and to kind of reflect on what is going around on the NL East right now, the Marlins, the Nationals, and Braves have not made a single signing yet. The Mets are obviously the big spenders of the offseason, leading with that Juan Soto $765 million contract that was handed out. And they've also brought in Dylan Covey, Clay Holmes, Frankie Montas, Justin Hagman, and the Phillies, of course, bringing in Jordan Romano there. I do hope Romano can become a significant piece of this Phillies bullpen, but what my concern is there is it does feel like they're shopping out of the bargain bin a little bit. And why that is so frustrating to me is that the Phillies are blessed with an owner that does not care about the price tag. That this is a team willing to spend. He is an owner willing to invest whatever it takes to get that championship. He has a ton of quotes that fired me up about getting his trophy back, about not caring about the legacy. When you talk legacy, nobody thinks about what that, tax was or how much you paid for that player. It's about putting trophies in the trophy case. And I do think he's truly the model for how a team should be run, how an owner wants a team to be run. So with that being said, what is the holdup here? And now I get you cannot just spend to spend. You have to get players that are going to improve this Phillies team, but I do not understand the lack of traction. And I will touch on the trade kind of conversations in a second, but the little things bother me as well. Jeff Hoffman still sitting out there as a free agent, and this is a guy who has expressed that he wants to be back in Philadelphia. Had a pretty incredible season through at least the regular season for this Phillies team last year. Pitched 68 games, 66.1 innings, 89 strikeouts, a 2.17 ERA, a .965 whip there, and there has been no traction as far as a conversation. No reports, nothing there. I get there is the kind of perspective if Hoffman has this desire to be a starting pitcher, why that would sour up things a little, but I also see a pathway to that working for this Phillies team when we factor in how much they've harped on how they need to add a fifth starter. And I totally get the lack of confidence in Taijuan Walker. Frankly, you cannot walk into this season with that guy as your certified fifth starter. But I do think there could be this potential bridge to Hoffman if he really wants to try this starting pitcher thing again, where he can start that for the first few games of the season until we have Andrew Painter ready and you can bring that guy to be the fifth starter that they seem to believe will be ready at some point this year. But to get into the bigger conversations with this Phillies team, it is beyond just the bullpen management negotiations. And I do think Dombrowski is negotiating in some pretty poor faith across the league. So to dive into some of this here, I first want to start off with Alec Bohm specifically, has been a guy who's been thrown around in just about every trade rumor as possible. But Dave Dombrowski, to me, does not seem like he's trying to get fair value back. We got the report that the Philadelphia Phillies' Alec Bohm is another trade candidate, but when the A's inquired about him, the Phillies asked for all-star reliever Mason Miller. That ended the conversation, an A's source said. And a pretty similar exchange with the Seattle Mariners, as citing sources with the knowledge of the Mariners trade talks, Adam Jude reported that the Phillies asked for one of the Mariners' two all-star starting pitchers, George Kirby or Logan Gilbert, in exchange for Bohm. And I have to imagine that was a pretty quick phone call and hang up as well. And while I get trying to get maximum value for your guys, and that's obviously the priority and what you want to happen, you're just not going to get very far when you're talking about that. You have to approach things with a realistic conversation, and this has been a theme for Dave Dombrowski really throughout his career. We had this quote coming from general manager Jim Bowden on Dave Dombrowski saying, quote, "He always wanted to give me his crap for my star players or prospects. And then eventually he gets one of the 30 GMs to bite. And that's why he keeps making these ridiculous proposals." Dave Dombrowski truly is the guy in your fantasy football league who's constantly offering you trade me Saquon Barkley and I'll give you Cade Otton. And it's completely fair because you need a tight end and blah, 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 and tries to explain it to you. That's kind of the vibe I get from Dave Dombrowski's negotiation tactics. And sure, it works out in that 1 in a billion chance that you can pull a fast one on a general manager. but I just don't think that is the best way to build relationships around the league when you are just swinging out these wild proposals. And frankly, I have to imagine in Dave Dombrowski's brain that he had to have a little bit of sanity here. He's been around the game long enough to get what fair value is, and I don't think that is necessarily what he's shooting for. And I think the other side of the factor here is I think some of the guys that he perceived as needle movers, like Alec Boehm, may not be viewed as positively across the league. Now, I think there's a pretty wide kind of perception of Alec Boehm as a player. Obviously, he was an all-star starter at third baseman this year, really took that next step both at the plate, particularly at the plate here, and then just cooled off in the second half. I don't think Alec Boehm is as good as he played the first half of the season. I also don't think he's as bad as he looked in the second half of the season. And kind of my same point with a lot of this is everyone sees the issues with Alec Boehm as well. The brutal reality of sports being as well covered and as on air and everything else as public as all this is, everyone has the same exact information that you're working with. That every other team saw Alec Boehm get benched in the postseason when the Phillies did that. There are these situations that have repercussions, and I do think other teams are kind of reading into that as well. And what particularly frustrates me, or where I think there could be something, a little bit of an internal issues brewing with this, is these trade rumors are not private either. That these are things that have been broken down all across. And to kind of point to this, shout out to our guy Luke Arcaney on this channel here, who had a little fun interaction with Jess Castellanos here, the wife of Nick Castellanos, with Luke tweeting the updates that matter. Nick Castellanos has cut his hair. And Jess Castellanos commenting below, his wife here saying, quote, the only real update I've read in days. So that is kind of the point that I wanted to get back to, as well as Dave, if you're going to do this, Dave Dombrowski, if you are going to make these significant trades, you got to get the job done, because it does no one any good or does not increase morale or belief or confidence that you're going to continue to be with the organization for players to constantly hear their name in trade rumors and have to show back up in training camp and believe that you're going to be with this team for the long haul. Now, I get this comes with the territory. When you're a professional athlete, that's sort of the things that you have to deal with. But I do think that for this Phillies team specifically, feels like things are teetering a little bit more than we believed in past years. Now, for Dave Dombrowski here, when kind of speaking about the money situation, which I referenced, he had this quote back in March saying, quote, you can't just go and sign every player for $25 million. Even clubs with a higher payroll than ours can't afford to do that. Your goal is to continually keep that flow of talent coming. And I do think when looking on the wider scale, the window's a little bit more narrow than a lot of us want to believe. That obviously Bryce Harper not getting any younger. Kyle Schwarber on an expire, or his deal set to expire soon. JT Realmuto heading into the final season of his contract here. There is not this long-term plan. A guy that kind of was invested to be this cornerstone with Bryce Harper, I think we may circle back to being really the biggest mistake that was made, and that, of course, being Trey Turner here. Now, in respect to Trey, he was much better this season for this Phillies team compared to his opening year. Finished with 21 home runs, 62 RBIs, a .338 on-base percentage, and 505 at-bats, had 149 hits here. There's no doubt about it that he was night and day better than was the perception or how he played in the first season in red pinstripes, but he's not the guy that we kind of hoped he would. Hopefully, this is progress, that he can be better. When you do look into some of the fan graphs and the breakdowns, that he certainly has taken a dip since coming to Philadelphia. And maybe with a third season, he can return to a little bit of that magic that we saw with the Dodgers, where he was in those borderline MVP conversations, looking like the best shortstop in baseball. And I have a hard time being too overly critical, because at the time, it did feel like the right move, that this could have been the guy that you need as a cornerstone piece to add to this core of this Phillies team that does desire to win World Series and does desire to compete at the highest level. But he just has not pulled his weight for those types of conversation, particularly when we break down the amount of money that is being committed to that. And I don't mean the amount of money as you're being paid too much, but where I do approach this from is those assets are obviously handed to Trey Turner with the expectation that he can deliver to those set deliverables there. The expectation that he has, he can reach. If that is not happening, then those assets would have been better used for other players here. So it's a frustrating reality that this is the case, and the Phillies have no choice on this one, but just to hope that Turner plays even better next year. And I do think there's a world where that happens, but I think when kind of looking around the league and evaluating things, I don't know if Trey Turner is this primetime guy the way that it has been made out to be. He's a good player. I don't know if he's that elite caliber player that they really desperately need him to be for this all to work out now. Now, there is still a lot of offseason left, but you did miss the boat on a lot of these big name free agents. Kyle Tucker, off the board. A lot of Juan Soto, not that they were ever truly in the mix for that, but a name that is off the board there. So this Phillies team now has to get creative. Dave Dombrowski, you're going to have to drop those crazy fantasy offers and try to have some real deal man-to-man negotiations if anything is going to get done. So I am sick of these preposterous off-the-walls offers hoping that one goes down. You got to find a way to make things happen, put pen to paper, and get a deal to go through. So I do hope that is the message from here for the remainder of the offseason, is that we did try our lofty goals, take those long shot offers, and hope something comes through. And now let's approach this with a little bit more of a serious mind. So Dave Dombrowski, let's get back cooking. Let's get in the lab and make some things happen quick, because I do think the window is shrinking for this Phillies team as every other team in the league continues to work to get better as well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Are you as fired up with Dave Dombrowski as I am right now? Do you think he's being unreasonable with all these offers, or am I overreacting to that response there? Drop your thoughts below. As always, appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button and dropping a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Phillies Digest. Peace.